Alright, so the people's main event, Silva versus Bryce Mitchell, this weekend at UFC 314, and this is an amazing matchup with one of the weirdest beefs in UFC history built into it, and I want to give my breakdown for it. But before I break this fight down, let me know who you guys have in this fight, whether it's Silva or Bryce Mitchell, and while you're down there, I'd appreciate if you guys could like, subscribe. We're really close to 600 subs. Anyway, let me get into it. Now, not only is this fight interesting stylistically, but Silva and Bryce Mitchell are probably one of the most autistic beefs in UFC history. I mean, you have Bryce Mitchell on one hand, who's like, Silva is the devil, okay? That guy does not have Jesus in his heart. Silva corrupted my mind with hot women and made me want to cheat on my wife. I never heard no stories about Hitler doing nothing like that. And then you have Silva, who's even more autistic, going... So yeah, all things considered, this is actually a pretty interesting beef considering it all started from Bryce Mitchell saying that Hitler would be a good guy to fish with. But outside of this insanely restarted beef, this is actually a really good fight. Like stylistically, it is very interesting because it's a matchup between two guys who are like absolute specialists at what they do. Okay, Silva is a top 3 striker right now at featherweight, and Bryce Mitchell is one of the best grapplers, if not the best grappler at featherweight. And I really think that this fight comes down to how effectively and how consistently Bryce Mitchell can take down Silva, and if he can even hang with him on the feet. Now, I really do think that Bryce Mitchell is going to struggle to take down Silva. Although Silva's takedown defense is relatively untested, from what we've seen so far, his takedown defense is very solid, and when he has been taken down, he's been able to get up relatively easily and not take a lot of damage. So I don't think that he's completely cooked when it comes to the ground, but Bryce Mitchell is like a different level to the guys that he's fought, so it is kind of hard to tell what happens if Bryce Mitchell gets a dominant position over Silva, but I think he'll be fine. But what I do think is going to be the biggest issue for Bryce Mitchell when he's going to be trying to get the takedowns is going to be the striking and the range management from Silva. Silva has very underrated fight IQ. I think he's a very smart fighter regardless of all the constant dapping up that he does. So I think that he'll understand that he cannot let Bryce Mitchell get close to him, because if he gets taken down, he's basically cooked. And Silva has shown in almost every single fight that he has elite distance management and elite level counter striking. And since Bryce Mitchell doesn't really have the same level of striking that Silva does, I think that Bryce Mitchell is going to really struggle trying to close the distance on Silva just because of how accurate he is and how powerful he is. Now, Bryce Mitchell striking on the other hand is very slow, very sloppy. It's just not very good. I don't really see Bryce Mitchell trying to keep this on the feet at all, but if he does, I think that Silva is probably going to piece him up like very easily. Okay, I mean, he has a lot of openings. I think Silva is very accurate, and he's just really smart in what he chooses to throw and what he chooses not to throw. And I really think that Silva's shot selection here is going to be pretty big for the fight, because Bryce Mitchell, he's not very good, so he's just going to be throwing whatever, like these kind of weird awkward punches, and I think that Silva will see this as a big opportunity and a big opening to counter. Now, another thing that I think is going to be pretty huge in this fight is probably going to be footwork, because Bryce Mitchell's footwork looks very stiff, very slow, and Silva's footwork on the other hand is like almost perfect. Okay, I've been talking about his distance management. That all comes from the footwork. Okay, Silva's going to make it impossible for Bryce Mitchell to close the distance here. Okay, and I really do think that this is where Bryce Mitchell's going to lose the fight, because Bryce is going to be the slower guy, the less technical guy, the stiffer guy, and then his entire game plan is going to be to try and close the distance and take down Silva. Like, I really do not see that happening at all. Okay, so considering that Silva is like very difficult to take down and his counters are insanely accurate, insanely powerful, I'm going to be going with Silva to win this fight. Probably like a round 1 or round 2 KO. I just really see Bryce Mitchell throwing something that's so stupid, and Silva will see that opening time and time again and eventually will counter Bryce Mitchell with a nice like right hook or something. I really see this fight going with Bryce Mitchell just kind of feinting, shooting a couple takedowns in the first round, you know, Silva just defending, being kind of slow, you know, he's just being very patient, and then there's just one shot, just one opening Bryce Mitchell has, and boom, he's out. Now, I do think that there is a chance that Silva gets subbed by Bryce Mitchell, but I do think it's kind of unlikely, but it's still really possible because Bryce Mitchell is very high level and we've never even seen Silva on the ground. But at the same time, Bryce Mitchell isn't really like a huge submission guy or anything. Okay, he does have very good submissions, but it's not like he's submitting guys like Hamza. Like, he's not even really a big finisher. Okay, most of his wins have come by unanimous decision or like a 1 in a million finish, like the twister or that bloody chokeslam that he hit against Kron Gracie. So I really don't see Bryce Mitchell winning this fight, but I guess it is a possibility, and you know, he's really motivated for this fight as well. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Sorry that it's a bit of a shorter video as well, because there's not really much to say here. I really do think that Silva is gonna like absolutely smoke Bryce Mitchell in the first round. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. All right. Finna take that lounge truck to Japan. I like the nigga, get your bands up. Yes, you can.